Welcome to the One Step Ahead series, part storytelling, part podcast, and entirely a celebration. This project is a way to honor the wise beings and medicines that serve us in creating a life that is aligned with the unique beings we are, and the values that connect us to ourselves, to others, to our precious planet, and energies in the universe. You're invited to share in the intimate conversations that arise when we ponder and explore the questions: what does living in alignment feel like? What does it look like? How do we find our way, and who are the guides that can help us discover and deepen our understanding of ourselves? If you're a curious seeker, if you've known that something about your circumstances is not quite the right fit and wondered, what else is there? This is a place to open, expand, and explore. One step ahead of our past, of where we've been, one step closer to where we want to be, where we're meant to be, finding alignment. Always, still, putting one foot in front of the other. It is just the two of us. And I love that it's just the two of us today because, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit actually, my conversations in the One Step Ahead series so far have really centered on celebrating the practitioners. I think of them as kind of alternative healthcare practitioners.
So love that.
Thank you. Yes, you know exactly what I mean when I say that, and that's why we're having this conversation. We'll come back to that. The conversations so far with Sabrina, my lovely co-host, she brings an element of practitioner to the conversations. And so we were this really sweet yin and yang couple where I come from the one saying, please, please tend to me. I don't even know what I need, but I'm here asking you for help. And she's on the side of, yes, she's doing that work herself. And she's also a very skilled caregiver. She's a practitioner in that world as well. And this is the first conversation where it's really celebrating sisterhood and having conversation with someone who's become a dear friend on this journey because we relate, because we're on this journey and we've trusted when they talk about soul sisters, when it just feels like, okay, this person needs to be in my life, I need to spend time with them. And then when you do actually meet, because our story of how we met will get shared too, but it was like we had known each other for years. It was just so easy to fall into an appreciation for each other, an openness to spending time with people who are different from us and really loving them for that, as opposed to comparing ourselves. And so I'm really excited for this. It feels like a soul sister episode where we get to share about why we're here celebrating together and how we are still doing a shitload of work. Like, we're not done. We're not there. There is no there. We're at this point in the journey, and it's because of all of these other topics, the talk of somatics and tending to our energy bodies and getting to know ourselves and moving towards alignment. What does that even mean? And here we are, and now it's the two of us from a thank you for caring for me perspective and talking about, yeah, there's some really beautiful things here. And at the same time, it's really fucking hard. And we show up with these big, bright smiles because we're excited to be together, not because everything in our lives is perfect and rosy. So,
Ooh.
catch a breath. Why don't we pause? We started talking about all of our beverages, our afternoon beverages. So I'm going to take a sip. I encourage Alla to enjoy her tea as much as possible. And friend, I love this because you started to tell me that you have a lovely cup of tea and some bits
Right
of
here
chocolate.
with my giant mug that's like the size of my face. And I have a plate of turtle's chocolates because, a
Beautiful.
goddess needs to nourish herself. And I've got some incense going in the background over there. And I have my glass of water and my beautiful little bright bouquet of pipe cleaner flowers that I created for one of my artist dates. So it's all beautifully coming together here.
I love that. And you're glowing. And I'm so grateful
Aw.
that you agreed to have this conversation. So thank you and welcome. And welcome to our viewers and listeners. There's all kinds of energy in the universe right now. We've been talking a lot about this. There are really, really, to me, it feels like tectonic shifts happening,
Yeah.
like paradigm shifting, but it's not paradigm shifting so much as paradigm adjustments. Like it's
Mm,
feeling really significant. And in a lot of ways, like it's both a really mucky time and an exquisitely beautiful time, right? There's so
yeah.
much gratitude, and then there's this darkness that I know for me, it used to just feel like a cloud that was covering me everywhere I went. And now it feels like these really beautiful parts of me that sometimes call on me for attention.
Yeah.
And I know you've been sharing, and thank you so much, so beautifully in conversation within the Artist Way community.
Mhm.
Like a lot of really heavy stuff has been coming up. And I try not to label things with a specific connotation that infers judgment. It's kind of tricky not to, but I'm learning to, at least for myself, reframe the sensations, the emotions that I feel, not as good or bad, but as for me, uplifting or unsettling.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of both happening right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You and I have had beautiful opportunities to celebrate together this year, which is so cool because we've been
Mm.
nurturing a friendship for, golly, I think it's getting on close to 2 years now, at least 2 years now.
I I would say acquaintanceship for about a year and a half because we were part of the same online container. So would
Hmm.
show up in these spaces and kind of be able to share similarities but differences. And it wasn't until the summer where we just decided to grab a coffee together and the rest is kind of unfolding history, I would say. Yeah.
To me, that's just incredible because we were hanging out together this morning and we said, I love you multiple times and we cheered each other on and we, got excited about this conversation.
Mm.
And to think that as adult women, we can cultivate such genuinely
Yeah.
heartfelt relationships with other women where it's all about uplifting them, not
Yeah.
candy coating everything or, that false sense of false, what do they call it? False optimism. We don't provide that, right? Like we have tough conversations and we can call each other out on stuff and we can trust that in doing so, we're doing so from a place of love. And
Yeah.
sometimes it might land awkwardly, but that's okay because then we now have an opportunity to practice being better communicators together, which we want to do because we love each other, because we bring so much to
Mm.
each other's lives. And at 49, for me, that feels mind blowing, just
Yeah.
that right there. So I'm going to go back and search my calendar. I want to see when our first
Oh
video
my
date was.
God, our friend
So
anniversary.
then we can celebrate that ongoing. Yeah, and thank
Yes.
you for mentioning that we started off in Kyla's community together because Kyla actually kicked off this series with us because
Oh,
I call her my home base.
yeah. Oh, beautiful.
And we got to celebrate with her and others in our beautiful
Yeah.
community just like barely over a month ago, which was
Mhm.
incredible because it still really feels in a lot of ways that until you meet people in person,
Yeah.
that there's something that I don't know if, tell me how this lands for you, because you probably have
Mhm.
a different way of feeling it. For me, I'm not quite as able to give my heart as fully
Yeah.
or really trust that is genuine until I feel that physical exchange of
Yeah.
energy.
I get it. I get it. And to me, I kind of call it, well, for me, I've had to be a little bit more detached because I was healing through a concussion. So I actually wasn't able to give more than I could at the time. So this online container was a safe haven and for me to show up and share what's happening for me weekly and be able to be held in that and be able to walk away and not feel the pressure to connect with anybody. So it does. An online space, I'm really, really grateful for it. And at the same time, nothing beats sharing memories and hugs and like actual real moments of connection with each other, right? It's the energy, right? Like, yes, you can kind of get the energy across the screen, but it's the, I want to say more like a connection attachment part of a connection that really makes it beautiful and unique.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Hmm.
Thinking about the nature of the communities, I know both of us belong to various, what to me, they feel like circles. In my world, most of them, if not, I would think all of them, occasional ceremonies. I've sat with men, but primarily I'm in circles of women. I really love, I know that you are part of a very sacred community where you practice with men and hold space for
Yeah.
men, and so we'll talk about that if you're okay with sharing,
I
because
would
I think it's
love
so
to. I would love
special.
to.
They are feeling very, very real. So even though it is online, it's virtual, there's something about the communities and how we're invited into it that our heart calls us towards that. And you could tell me if this is true for you as well or different, that I know right away when my heart feels like, yes, this is good, more versus this, no. So it's that expansion or contraction
Yeah.
sensation. And with Kyla, many things she speaks about, there's this full expansion. I love that it's not all things because it's not like it's just Kyla, I'll do everything she offers. It's more about knowing that she has this circle, created this community where, like attending a live circle, when I step into that space, I just feel held.
Yeah.
I know any masks that might be trying to, no, I just arrive and I'm me. And that speaks to, I think, what you said when we just started, that y- you feel held in that community and you
Mm.
don't have to show up in any specific
Yeah.
way. I know in the real world, I'm almost painfully conscious at times of the energy that I bring to a space. I kind of have a superpower in that if I bring bright, joyful energy, that's fine. People like that. That is healthy for a space and a community. But I really try to avoid amplifying when my energy is anything but what I would want to share with others, if that makes sense. And so being part of online conversations, especially when you're still courageous and able to be on camera, there's still that connection. And then when we did meet in person, it's almost a little bit of, I imagine the sensation of love at first sight. Because
Yeah.
then our souls feel each other's energy and they're like, yep,
Yeah.
she's the one that I've been looking forward to finding my way to, right?
Yeah.
Trusting it's all part of the plan.
You had me at steep tea and donuts.
Eat tea. Okay, I'm going to try not to do a plug. I'm just going to have my warm cup here for a sec.
It's like wrap your hands around. You're like, this is not a sponsorship unless you get back to them and be like affiliates. Yeah.
Oh, too funny, too
Oh my
funny.
God. Yeah.
So we have Kyla in common. We have also very much in common in sticking with the theme of the show. Our parts of our being are compelled to not settle for what feels worthless, not worthwhile. I think of it as being in a
Mm.
place of hopelessness. I refused to feel hopeless. And thank goodness, eventually I learned
Mm.
then stop choosing to feel hopeless. But the
Mm.
only reason I learned was because I had people in my life who really loved and tended to me, who modeled what that looked
Yeah.
like, who, when I didn't do that, could gently have a conversation to help show
Oh,
me that there was an opportunity there so that the next time, it's been, I would imagine, like having a toddler who was in the toddler phase for decades. Is that kind of how parts of it feel, right? Like I'm just this really sweet, curious being who wants to love all over everything, get dirty, mucky, play with all the things, and know that the world is a safe, good place to be. And
Yeah.
the older I get, the more I'm embodying her, which I love so much. But again, it all
Oh,
comes back to having done all of those things along the
yeah,
way. I
yeah.
would love for you to tell us a little bit about how would you describe your ability to, this is going to be
Oh
an awesome
boy.
editing opportunity. How would you describe your ability to know that you are not meant to settle for anything less than what feels worthwhile to you?
Whew, that is $1 million question that I am still in discovery of. And I'd like to say that I'm on some sort of threshold of the other side of I know what that looks like, and it's still such a messy process for me because a lot of my upbringing and conditioning, and I love that you're shared, you're like, yeah, I had people who pulled me forth and to support me in such beautiful way and to really be there to mentor me through my journey. I feel like that hasn't been my path, and my path has been through, I would say, painful evolution of what works, what doesn't. I've often learned through contrast. And I feel like in the last, I want to say my working years of my life from 20 onward, it's been a very challenging journey for me. And so I am just now in the process of discovering what lights me up, what really feels good, what is something that I need to choose for myself and be in alignment with who I am and my authenticity without having to question that and then dim my own light and be like, well, no, 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 I'm going to settle for less. I'm going to settle for less because a lot of my life has been settling for less because I didn't think I deserved it. And so for me, the painful reality of, looking back and doing the healing work and really just like having a snapshot of like, here's where I didn't choose myself. Here's where I didn't stand up for myself. Here is where my self-worth got in the way of getting what I needed to. And here's how I've let people treat me as less than because that was an expression and a part of my journey that I've had to really learn and embody and overcome. And through my healing work, I really stepped into my healing work when I was 28. I moved back from Australia and I was in this place of like, okay, something's got to give because I kept seeing the same pattern show up over and over and over again in relationships, in situations that life would throw my way to a point where I think I started questioning, like, is this all there is? Is this all there is? And for the last 12 years of my life, I've been going through a big upheaval and a healing journey. And I always say healing is revealing. So I've been kind of like in a self revealing journey of looking at, well, here's my conditioning, here's my patterns, here's my behaviors, and what's underneath that.
Mm.
And what I discovered underneath that was a lot of shame beliefs and core beliefs about who I thought I was based on what my parents modeled to me. And it's confronting and it's also empowering because the more I can see where I'm coming from and what is holding me back, the more I can start making different choices. And that's where I'm right now of like looking at, well, if I keep choosing the same behaviors, these are going to be the outcomes. So if I want to choose a new belief, I need to start behaving differently to show myself that I'm worthy, to show myself that I'm capable, to show myself that I matter and I'm important, all of these bits and pieces. And so, what a beautiful way for us to talk about it today, because I feel like I am slowly aligning to a more authentic expression of who I am, but I've had to get there through these really challenging situations in order to come closer and closer and closer to who I am and to align myself to become a person becoming it's the becoming of a person that I would be proud of, that I would be best friends with, that I would be my, forever friend and love and respect and cherish. And from that space, be able to choose the kind of connections that serve me high is good, like you, to be able to have beautiful female friendships and overcome a lot of my female wounding that I've experienced and expressed through my teenage and my 20s. And so to me, it's been quite a confronting journey, and it's still going to unravel and lead me to where I need to go. But it's literally little itty bitty incremental steps that I have to do, to one step, like one step at a time to get to the next, just to step into the next version of myself. So if I were to talk about where I'm going, I'm not sure, but I'm taking the next baby steps to see who is the next version of me that wants to come out and express herself. Bit of a
I
path,
love that.
but
I love that. And everything you share, I think, is
Mhm.
so helpful. I'm really hoping this episode finds its way to viewers and listeners who can relate more to your start than mine.
Mhm.
I know we both had a very rocky foundation. And at the same time, I am so grateful for the beings who arrived in my life to just love and take care of me. And I'm really grateful to myself for seeking them out and loving them so wholeheartedly back that they couldn't help
Mm.
but adore me,
Mhm.
even
Yeah.
when I drove them bonkers. And that's great. Thank you. But I also know that that point in my journey where it was so confronting because I didn't understand things like self-esteem.
Yeah.
17 years old, I was trying to learn about self-esteem and the concept seemed so simple. And my argument was, I have no idea what you mean when you say I can choose how I
Mm.
feel about myself.
Oh my
The
gosh.
only thing I feel about myself are the shitty things that other people told me
Yeah.
they felt about me. And that was my whole
Yeah.
identity. And so once I realized, okay, well, obviously this isn't a superpower. Other people seem to be able to figure it out. So I knew that I wanted to go towards that. I wanted to be able to do that, even though I didn't know what it looked like.
Yeah.
And I was well into my 30s before I even started to understand the different phases of moving from like a victim mindset to a survival mindset to a thriving mindset.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
so I lived my early adult life and teen years very much rooted in the victim mindset and really angry that the world told me I was somehow responsible for that. Like that just didn't
Oof.
make any
Oh.
sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me. But there was something about it that parts of my being were like, yeah, but that can be for you too. And I wouldn't have like I didn't write it down as a goal. That's why I asked the question about how do you communicate with this part of ourselves? And I think it really comes down to trust. So there are
Mm.
things that we are so strongly drawn towards
Yeah.
that our conscious and I think even our subconscious,
Hmm.
it's at a soul level, right? It's at a different kind of energetic level. And I feel like that energy is sort of like, you know, when you talk to water, the water particles, if you talk to them with love in your voice, they form these beautiful crystalline structures that look like
Mm.
snowflakes. And I feel kind of like the kindred spirits, those of us who are on this woo path of personal
Yeah.
development,
Yeah.
because we're like, I'm here right now. I want this to be the best that it can be. And I'm done settling for usually
Mm.
what outside forces are telling us
Yeah.
we have to settle for. It's like,
Yeah.
no, no,
Yeah.
actually, it's
Yeah.
taken me a while to figure this out, but I'm
No.
going to choose me. Now, I say that. And I want to bring the conversation right square, pointing now like, okay, great, you've had that breakthrough. You move from victim mentality. Now
Yeah.
you're really embodying a survival mentality. And that's great because at least there's a sense of responsibility for oneself,
Yeah.
which gives you, opportunities to prove you can take care of your own shit, super highly
Mhm.
important things.
Mhm.
And that helps us develop a sense of confidence, I think.
Mhm.
And I also know that when our sweet beings are so focused because they have to be on survival, it leaves a whole lot less spaciousness
Yeah.
to be persistent in doing this work. And so I want you to share, friend,
Hmm.
what what is that like? And you're confronting different parts of yourself recently. You shared a little bit about that. We're going to talk about where that's been coming through. And you're confronting and you're getting to know these different parts of self. How do you navigate the relationship of doing all of this important work within and navigating? And I'm a strong, independent female who has shit to take care of, all those super
Yeah.
highly important things. I know for me, there's been a real luxury and spaciousness, and that is far from the reality for so many people who are like, I don't want to fucking settle, and I don't have time to learn how to do or to practice. And so, if you would share a bit about how you continue to navigate that, really, because
Mm.
life has that financial ebb and flow, and yet you're prioritizing being with yourself in these
Yeah.
ways that are often exhausting, right? They're
Yeah.
exhausting sometimes when big things are moving and
Yeah.
shifting.
That is such a big question. And I think as being, I'm a Libra, so balance is a forever a journey for me, finding the balance between both. And as someone who has been trained in being the fixer for others, being a fixer for everything else externally outside of myself, it's almost like I have to be very careful that I don't turn that fixer mindset against myself, because I'm forever then might be looking for things that are wrong with me rather than life bringing a
Mm.
lesson to me. And I'm like, okay, here's a lesson. How do I manage that? How do I get to that? And really, I think my journey didn't I mean, I think COVID was such a precipice of me diving deeper into learning to be with myself, because when COVID happened and everybody had to go be inside, it's almost like, Mother Nature's like, where you're go think about all the things that you've done. Go to your room and like really think about it. And I really understood that that time was a sacred time to actually be in reflection to what was going on for us as we were navigating this huge pandemic. And what I realized is, because I had social anxiety, or I had anxiety in general, and I had avoidance tendencies, whenever something uncomfortable would show up, I would want to go and connect with somebody. It's almost like I was trying to distract myself from the uncomfortable that I was feeling, that I would go and reach out to a friend or go to an event. And so I was constantly kind of like distracting myself with these external, ways of coping. And when COVID showed up, I really noticed, I'm like, oh my gosh, like here's all the discomfort, here's all the or all the anxiety coming up for me. And these coping mechanisms were taken away. So how do I deal with this? And I remember actually starting to microdose with mushrooms at the time. So navigating a journey with psilocybin was kind of the tipping point for me to start looking at what was going on for me internally. And the beautiful little beings were actually teaching me how to feel and how to grieve. So
Mm.
that was, I would say, outside of all of the other things I was doing up to that point, it almost like became the focal point of like, you need to really start looking what's going on inside, because you're repeating patterns. You're not living your life. You're cycling through the same things over and over again. And so that's where my grief journey really began. And I often say that, I mean, we as humans tend to avoid feeling, but I'm like, within feeling, there's such freedom on the other side. Because for me, as soon as I start opening, I want to say like it's a pressure cooker, right? Like it's like I'm suppressing all these feelings and emotions, I'm distracting myself, and as soon as I start kind of opening the little valve and it start releasing the pressure, that's when it just started like, oh my god, here's this thing, here's this thing. It's almost like everything, it's like
Mm.
it's like my voice or my internal parts, I'm like, she's finally listening. So it became this journey of having these different parts pop into my and at the time I think I was really overwhelmed. I didn't really know how to be with. And so through this working with microdosing with psilocybin, they taught me how to be with myself when things were coming up.
Hmm.
And recently, I think because I got rear-ended 2 years ago and I hit my head and I had a concussion, life was further going like, you got to get out of here and back into your body.
Hmm.
And that was, I think, one of the most physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, everything. Like, I feel like that's where I really bottomed out. It's almost like the rug's been taken from under me. I bottomed out and I had to learn to be with a new, tender part of me who was in that helpless state because I literally didn't have energy to fend for myself besides maybe cooking a meal, but like my capacity to be with the external world and everything else outside of really taking care of me got diminished. And so further, I was asked to learn to be with myself in a new way. And with that comes a lot of grief. And I was
Hmm.
actually talking to a friend who also has a concussion, and I was saying, like, like you up to that point, I was, let's say, functioning here, right? On the outside, I was functioning here. I was a capable human being. I could do the things and I could override all the instincts and I could push through life. All of a sudden, you get hit. Your body is in shock. There's a lot of things going on that sends me down to the bottom. And it was my neurophysio at the time that she's like, you do realize that, like, you're here, this is where you're expecting to be, and the reality doesn't match that. So there's a lot of grief that had to come through me of grieving my old capacity, grieving my old self, grieving my own way, like old ways of being, and so I could be able to meet myself in a place of where I was now. And grief allowed me to really be with what mattered. And when I have very little capacity for life, I really had to be selective in what mattered.
Hmm.
It was my connections, it was finding supports through community, it was showing myself that I mattered by advocating through ICBC and fighting the system and be like, you need to give me more treatment. So in a way, that accident sent me deeper into, like, you matter, you are worthy, and we need to do these things in order to get you what you need. Like, I look back and there's actually, I'm really inspired by our chat today because I want to record my journey through my healing with and through dealing with ICBC, who was basically trying to tell me that I was burdened on the system, that I was that I'm faking it, that they were medically gaslighting me. So I'm like going through this journey of healing while somebody on the other side basically trying to, like, beat me down. And so I'm just really, really, and I just want to take a moment of acknowledgement that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I stopped to look back and be like, wow, I've navigated all of that. I've been able to not only survive that, but come on to the other side with so much more strength. And I also have to say that I hand selected all of my healers. And you talk about bringing healers onto your podcast. I'm like, I hand selected all of my healers because I needed to know that who I was selecting were the right people energetically. They're able to be my advocate with the system and all of these bits and pieces. And I literally collected a team of folks who helped to help me make sense of who I was at the time, and what I was, like, working through. And having that foundation crumble, having to kind of turn really more inward toward myself, helped to expose more of the bits of who I was, and kind of like opened up and kind of collapsed and crumbled. And then I had to pick up the pieces and be like, "Ooh, this is interesting. Oh, this is a childhood trauma. Oh, okay, here's another piece of me." And being like, what do I want to keep?
Hmm.
And what has served me? And coming from a victim mindset, especially dealing with a system who's making you feel like, I've been victimized and they're treating me like and to go into deep survival mode because my job ended, I had no financial security, like all those like things that are, I wouldn't consider safety, money safety to me, like that's maybe what I equate money equals safety. All of those pieces got taken away, and I've had to really be with like, who am I as an individual, as a person outside of all of that? When I don't have a job, am I still worthy? When I don't have the bank account that I want, am I still worthy? When I don't have the kind of life that I dreamed of by 40, like, am I worthy? And so it's all of these things came and confronted me in a way. And I've had to come back to my own self-worth and be like, I'm worthy despite of all of this. And it's an ongoing challenge, and it's an ongoing reminder, because I still get tripped up. I still sit in my pity party, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, like, oh my God, like, I'm insignificant and who cares? Like, I get tripped up because those are the voices that have been so perpetual. It's almost like they're on the same train track, and they've been there for years, and they're the ones that they're keeping me safe from really living my life and really trying. And there's the soul part of me that's going like, there's more to life than this.
Yeah.
Right? So to be able to be with all of them, and then what I'm realizing is like, who do you give power to? Like you
Mm.
said, when you have a choice, when you know you're a creator of your own life, what do you give power to? The fear voices, which I do still, they still show up and I give them power. Or is there a part of me that goes like, we get to do this differently now?
Mhm.
And I want to bring it back to the artist's way. And like, I just absolutely love that I started this journey. Oh my gosh, 10 weeks ago, we started this journey together to do the artist way, because after the bottoming out, I knew that I had to put myself back together. And the artist way has been such a beautiful way for me to connect to myself. And I've just actually realized, I'm like, I've been doing this for 10 weeks. This is the most consistent I've been with a habit, besides maybe 5 days where I didn't journal because I was away or something happened. But to come back to those morning pages and to give myself the voice that I never had, and to let it all kind of spill out on the pages over and over and over again. And then the last recent couple of weeks, I've been really getting honest with myself. Like, there's a voice that's like been like angry and calling me out on things, because it feels safe to do so, because it's not going to go like, oh, she's going to shut me down, or oh my God, I'm not allowed to say this, I'm not allowed to swear, right? So it's been this beautiful journey of like, I feel like coming full circle to find the tool, like the morning pages, to have conversations with myself, and to be able to coach myself through things, and to be able to reframe stories and really see the nuggets and the beauty of it all. So I'm not just sitting there spinning in the story of like, oh, unworthy and all these things. Life is like, well, did you think of this and this and this? So it's a daily reminder to come back to myself, to come back to having a conversation with myself, because I know what I need.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's such a shift from, I think, as women, and I've been talking to a few women about this. It's almost like we were taught to focus externally. We were taught to focus on other people. We were taught to focus on, how do I please this person? How do I do what I need to in order to get what I need from this person? How do I augment myself? How do I shape shift, put myself into this little tiny box because society tells me that's all I'm worth? Will then I be loved? Will then I be cared for? Will then I get the job, right? And I think there's this beautiful momentum that's going on where a lot of women are going like, the box feels small.
Yes. Yes.
Like, my wings have been clipped for too freaking long. Here's the cage door. I have the key.
Yeah.
How do I walk through the cage and reclaim my freedom and reclaim my sovereignty and reclaim my authentic, aligned life? And on the other side of that, grief can come up, because it's like, if this was possible all of these years and this is what I've been choosing, there's once again this realization like, oh my God, I've been perpetuating this hurt or pain or
Oh.
suffering. And so to me, the more I let myself feel, the more I let myself grieve, the more I let myself just step into the next, right? Because it's both. It's both. We get to know that we can dream big, and it also can feel scary if we didn't allow ourselves to do so. It's like allowing all of it to be there. You know, I could be excited about the future and I could be freaking scared because I don't know what the future looks like. And how do
Absolutely.
you give space to all of that? And I feel like the morning pages have been like, here's my inner teenager, here's my little inner whatever 7-year old, here's my this piece. And it's almost like I'm constantly having to navigate and show them that something else is possible when all they've known is a cage.
Mhm. You speak so beautifully to the journey that the artist way takes writers through. It's so sweet because it starts off, it is both gentle and confronting
Oh,
all the way along, but it's so skillfully scaffolded to take writers from this moment of growth, now step it up. New level of awareness, step it up. Another level of
yeah,
awareness. Okay, now here are these new parts of self.
yeah.
And all the way along, we build the capacity
Oh,
to do that work because and let's be honest, far fewer finish than start the artist's way. And many fall off around week 8, 9,
yeah,
which is kind of mind-boggling. It's, like the ones who drop out weeks before semester ends and they don't graduate. But it is really you're choosing to spend that time getting to know yourself. It's
yeah,
not just hanging out
yeah.
with yourself, it's really getting to know yourself and then having to see
Hmm.
all of that
Yeah,
and practice loving and
yeah,
accepting and
yeah,
celebrating
yeah.
and that's kind of exhausting. It can be. It can be. It's not always, but it can be.
I wouldn't say it's exhausting. I think there's a level of confrontation as you were speaking. I'm like, oh my God, it's like the pages ask you to show up in the most radical, self-honest way. And if we have been living our whole lives trying to live for somebody else, trying to do good out there in order to have our needs met internally, which is a very codependent way of being, the pages and the journey that it asks us to go through, it's like she chips away at the layers every week. And as soon as I reach a level, I'm like, oh man, I haven't looked at this, I'm uncomfortable. That's where resistance comes in, and this is where avoidance sets in. And she even says it's like week 8, 9, 10, this is where resistance really sets in. Keep coming back to your pages. And like for me, over the last couple of weeks, when I have anger coming out, I have like these voices where I'm like, holy, if somebody read these pages, they would think I am crazy.
Hmm.
But here I am going to those places and spaces that I've never been given a space to be in and with. And all of a sudden it's coming out, and it's like, it's almost like the globe has been shaken up and things are settling, and every chapter there's a new shake up and a wake up, right? And so to me it becomes the most honest conversations I've had with myself, even if it's uncomfortable, even if my little one is swearing at me and telling me I've been out of integrity, which is all true. Like even when I'm being called out, even when I'm in this place of like, oh my God, there's so much like inner hatred that's coming through. I'm like, I've never given myself the opportunity to be with that. And we
Hmm.
don't often do that in society, right? So it's like double confronting. I'm like, oh my God, I am facing myself. What the hell do I do with all of this? And it's uncomfortable. And I almost want to be like, no, thank you. But then there's a part of me like, there is beauty on the other side. What's on the other side is my ability to be with that discomfort, to be with that voice and be like, and I still love you. And I'm willing to listen. What else? Tell me more. And to be able to go back to the pages and show myself. And this is really where I really see where I'm building trust with myself.
Hmm.
Voices that are revealing themselves, doesn't matter how ugly they may seem, I keep coming back and loving them, being like, I love you. What else do you need? Tell me more. I'm here to listen. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you before. We didn't know. And so it becomes this beautiful sacred space of connection and forgiveness and grief and aha moments and joy, and like all of it gets to be there. And that's the spectrum of life.
Yeah,
Like that is the truth of who I am, and all of these parts are valid in what they have to say. And I'm
absolutely.
finally listening
Hmm.
and being honest with myself, which is like, it's hard because I think we're so used to living in denial, which denial is another phase of grief. The more I tell myself these stories, the more it's not happening. Meanwhile, there's a whole slew of emotions and like inner parts going, pay attention. I'm trying to communicate to you. I'm like, no, thank you. No, oh, something's going on over here. Okay, let me just distract myself with my phone over here. And it's like I'm like, I have both anxious and avoidant parts. I have both of them. And I'm trying to lean towards the avoidance side because I know that there's so much truth and power on the other side of me avoiding something.
Yeah. You've
Yeah.
seen enough proof, you've created enough proof in your life to know
Yeah.
and that you can fully trust that. And
Yeah.
thus also become even bolder in your own
Yeah.
self-trust because you've demonstrated that you're continuing to show up for
Yeah.
yourself in these ways. I love the way that you describe really kind of holding space for these different parts of yourself to really to introduce themselves and for you to get to know and how beautiful that you're cultivating these sweet new relationships of tell me more, I'm sorry I wasn't listening before, you have my full attention now. I have found in my own experience, and it was totally unexpected, that on the other side of that, like during that, I didn't realize that I was genuinely that's my high was my highest self, cultivating a loving, non-judgmental relationship with all of
Yeah.
these other parts of myself. And once they felt seen and held and acknowledged, all of a sudden they were willing to play along
Yeah.
with so much more eagerness, even if sometimes that just meant sitting, chilling out, taking it all in. There's nothing for you to do here. You get to just watch. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, I'm going to try that. And again, it's always a practice, right? Because there'll still be those times where those parts of self feel they're part of us. So they come forward at
Yeah.
various times, but we can learn to let them express in healthy, good ways
Yeah.
while feeling fully held and acknowledged. So, cheers to you and all of those incredible, beautiful internal relationships that
Mm.
you're cultivating, and welcome to those
Aw,
parts of self who
thank you.
are practicing expressing what's been
Mhm.
going on for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, we're here
Yeah.
for all those parts of you. We
Oh
love you.
God. Ugh, and like as I'm sitting there, I'm like, feeling this spit. I'm like, oh my God, did I say too? Oh my God, did I like reveal too much of myself? Like there's that when there's a revealing of like what's actually going on, and the truth of if I share this, will it send somebody running? Because I've had those experiences before where I've gotten vulnerable or expressed a need, and somebody's like, oh, sorry, I'm out of here. That's become too much now, right? And what I've realized through these pages, I'm doing it for me, nobody else. I'm using my voice to speak up for me and what's going on for me. And it doesn't really matter what happens externally. If
Mhm.
my truth rattles somebody so deeply where they decide to like leave me, then I'm like, that's okay. You just taking yourself out of the connection equation. However, the previous version of me that was so desperately seeking connection so I wouldn't be abandoned or I wouldn't be rejected would swallow my truth and swallow my voice at the expense of the relationship. And like you sent me questions and you said like, what's the most painful thing about not living in alignment with who you are or your life? And what I realized a few weeks ago is like the biggest pain for me is to not be who I am. That's the most painful existence because what I'm literally doing is like, here's my authentic self. And because I've learned that maybe this part of me is not welcome here, this part of me is, unacceptable, I've literally kept myself contained And it requires so much energy to keep all of that inside that it takes away resources from me actually living my life in the way that I'm meant to express myself, for the sake of me. And so that to me has become, through these pages, I've realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, all the pain I've felt over the years is because I've had to contain myself so tightly, because I was afraid that me showing up as myself and my authentic expression would scare people off. And now that the more I develop that self-trust and relationship with myself, the more I'm like, I got me. If
Mhm.
somebody doesn't like me for who I am and what I stand for, I got me. Like, because through these play dates and through spending time with myself and creating and like going out and in in the world, going to the markets by myself, I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I'm like, I got me. And whoever comes along is just like a beautiful addition to what I've already created.
I love that. And you're so right, because you can trust now. You know what your energetic vibration is. And so you can trust that the ones who are going to have those moments of love at first sight, those ones that feel like a
Yeah.
kindred spirit, like how beautiful when those ones come along. And also now how beautiful when there's a moment to interact with someone who's not a kindred spirit, right? Like thank you for that, dip into
Mhm.
my life and making it a little bit interesting. But
Mhm.
to be able to just flow with that and to be
Yeah.
okay with that, with the
Yeah.
ones who go, trusting fully that they're meant to go, because you know what it's meant to feel like now, and you
Mhm.
know what you're worthy of.
Yeah.
Now, the practice of reminding yourself,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's the practice of reminding ourselves that we're worthy. I think the practice is in the practicing receiving,
Oh.
because the more skillful we become at receiving, the more that proves to all parts of us that we know we are worthy. Whereas saying, I am worthy, that can just, let me tell you, there are parts in my brain that are like bullshit, depending on where my energy levels are. But I can always tell myself it is so valuable to practice receiving, even if it's moments of rest or a bite of chocolate
Mhm.
or your mug of tea or time with a friend or on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
different conversation. It becomes active. It's not a
Yeah.
conversation. It's just
Yeah.
choosing this and trusting that it's meant for me. It's meant for you. It's meant for all of us
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah. I feel like it's become, I know that there's been so many books and articles written about our rest receiving, whatever that looks like, as an act of rebellion, because I think societally we're taught to produce so much, right? I remember this, having this internalized capitalist society, like system within me, when I was in 2019, when I was on EI, and I'm sitting there this summer, and I've been paying into it since I was 14. I was working since I was 14, but the level of guilt that I felt about taking time off and not being productive, it's almost like I was like, oh my gosh, I am not worthy unless I produce. Unless I'm contributing to society, I am not worthy to anybody else. So my mind and my own psyche were so set on like working, producing, proving, this active chasing, kind of like that taking time off and resting and just being with myself was confronting. And then to, like you say, to be able to receive, to be like, it's safe for you to receive, you don't have to do anything else in return. Because for me, my conditioning was like, well, if I receive something, I have to give back. It becomes a transaction,
Right.
because I can't just receive and not have to like do something for it. So it's just like such a radical way of coming back to like, I'm worthy of receiving this. I'm worthy of rest. I'm worthy of connections that fulfill me. And I'm worthy of my own time and my own praise. And so I've also been like in journals, I'm like, I'm allowed this. I'm like, the allowing has been such a interesting practice. I'm like, I'm allowed to do this. I'm like, oh my God, what does allowance even mean? Like, I almost have to give myself permission to be like, you're allowed to do this, because I'm waiting for somebody externally to come in and be like, "Oh, Alla, you can create this life that you want.
Yeah.
I give you permission." I'm waiting for somebody else to give me permission. The permission that I need to give is to myself. I'm allowed to dream. I'm allowed to desire. I'm allowed to do all these things. It's in my human nature too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's all here for all of us, but you have to take the steps in the right direction to get the
yeah.
it's going to meet us. I trust fully that it's on its way to me, just as maybe sometimes it's even coming faster. It's like we love that she goes slow, so we're going to make up some of that slack. I trust fully that it's going to meet me. My dreams are going to meet me at the point in the middle where we're meant to meet. But I still, every single day, have to make that very deliberate choice. Even if, sometimes my smallest step is, did I think about this thing today? Did I have a conversation with my morning pages in my head
Mm,
because I didn't get to writing them? That is completely invisible to anyone. And if we're not careful, we can then feel guilty. But instead, we can celebrate that as I acknowledged my pages today. They are still important to me. I look forward to the next time I
mm,
get to spend time
mm.
writing with them. Like the baby steps get to be so small because
Yeah.
sometimes that's our best. And as someone who I believe you still live life with post-concussive syndrome, someone who is still recovering from a concussion, head injuries are no joke. And so to be still choosing to do the things and to be developing such beautiful skills because you, in so many ways, are a mentor in circles where there are new people who are coming in who are they're following their heart that says, I want this, but they don't even know yet why they're there. And
Yeah.
I love that we have the opportunity to share time and space together as
Mm.
often as we do because you said it. There's what how did you please help me remember.
I don't
I'm
even know
in
what
my
I
brain it
said.
says there's a tidal wave, but there's a real period of awakening right now where so many women at all ages
Yeah.
are it's like they're coming out of a fog and they're saying,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I'm calling bullshit on you when you were describing the sensation of not being worthy if we're not producing, if we're not doing, and I would add to that more often than not something that contributes to the capitalist system.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
we're helping tend a garden or if we're helping take care of animals, all of those things fill us up, many of us,
Yeah.
with this sense of, oh, such good
Yeah.
work that I'm doing here. And we've been taught that no, you're not. Unless you're doing something to help somebody else make money, then what you're
Yeah.
doing is less valuable. And we're calling
Yeah.
bullshit on that. And taking the time to get to know who we are.
Yeah.
I'm barely just getting to know this version of
Yeah.
me. I am so excited. I am like having the best time getting to know her. She makes me laugh. She has fun
Aw.
ideas. It's so cool because I'm really practicing embodying the confidence to be the parts of me that just want to express. I don't have to
Oh,
label them. I don't have to understand them.
yeah.
I can just hold space and trust that they're going to express
Yeah.
without overthinking, without scanning the room to find out if I've upset someone and, oh shit, do I need to fix that or
Yeah.
cover my ass
Yeah.
or apologize? Like, no, you said it yourself. We're at this point
Mm.
where I'm not for everybody, and I trust that those
Yeah.
who figure that out,
Yeah.
I don't even have to tell them. They're gonna go. The
Yeah.
universe is gonna take care of that, which then helps us get even clearer on who we are, right?
Mm.
Seeing who we're not for is a
Mm.
really clear way of identifying who we're not for, which could
Yeah.
save us a lot of hassle.
Yeah. It's beautiful to come to this place of like, you're just like lean back and trust and sit there and be like, who I am, and like declaring it to the world. Here's who I am. Here's what I stand for. Here's what I'm all about. And from that space, instead of like running to everybody being like, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like, you just be like, here I am. Like, do you want to come play? Do you want to come
Absolutely.
play? And I feel like that's how, like, if I were to bring it back to our conversation this morning of how we met and everything else, it's like we've seen each other enough, and all of a sudden it's like, do you want to come play? Do you want to come play with me? Like that's I think, and I'm like, as a woman in her 40s now, like I'm like, how do you make friends? Like,
I know it feels so
like,
awkward, but at the same
like,
time, it's so much fun.
yeah. Do you want to maybe like grab a tea and go for a walk?
Yeah.
Like I kind of like you,
It
and I think
feels
it's
kind of like online dating, right?
totally, yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah,
so much sweeter because I know that you aren't going to be judging anything. Come as you are, which is very different
yeah.
from the dating world, which it would be great if the vibe was come as you are. But let's be honest, even in my year 23 with James, date night still means I put a little more oomph into it. But
Aw, I love that.
we've had slumber parties. Like we've seen the hair up, the jammies on, all the things, and it's like,
Yep.
yes, I love you even more for it. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. Hmm.
Friend, as we start to wind down our conversation,
Yes.
and thank you so much. I really love just making the invitation and then seeing how
Yeah,
things
I
flow.
love it. I love it.
Fully
Organic
trust you.
flow.
So many of the things you were sharing, I was like, oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. Just imagining if my younger self were hearing it. So thank you.
Mm,
On the theme of living an authentically aligned, joyfully creative,
mm,
expressive life, if you were to encounter
mhm,
lovely humans like yourself at 20, maybe not 28, maybe you haven't gotten to that point,
mhm,
maybe they're even older and they're just like something about this, I'm feeling like there's better. What
mhm,
would you offer to people who feel the niggle but don't yet understand maybe what they're being
mhm.
compelled
Yeah.
towards?
I would say follow that curiosity and have no expectation of where it might take you. I
Mhm.
think for me, whenever I'm like, ooh, being pulled towards something, I'm like, okay, it's something, and I'm like, okay, I need to explore this and see what it might look like, knowing, and this is something that I've actually just had to journal about. Open the door, walk through it. If you don't like what's on the other side, walk right back and close it, because there's 100 other doors that you can go through. And if I were to give myself the permission to just explore without having to stay in something because I chose it, that's been a biggest lesson of like, just because I chose it a year ago because I was in a different place than I am today doesn't mean I have to stick to it. Like I can pivot, I can reinvent myself. So I'm like, use life as a journey of exploration, of figuring out who it is that you are becoming while you're exploring different situations. Because I think everything comes back to who are you in in this connection? Who are you in this behavior in this situation? So everything really is like, what is life showing me about me?
Mhm.
And from there expand on it, and from there it's like follow the next breadcrumb, because I'm like, it's uncomfortable to be in this place of unknown, and it's also just following those little breadcrumbs of like what is next. And Steve Jobs, I think, is a beautiful human who said you can only see where you got to by connecting the dots backwards, because we don't know where life is leading us until you go back like, oh my God, so I talked to this person connected me to this, and then they mentioned this, and I'm like, oh, that sounds curious. Oh my gosh, okay, that looks good. And then all of a sudden kind of life unravels, and I think we don't practice curiosity enough. And to
Wholeheartedly
me, I think
agree.
it's just like, stay curious, follow the nudges. You can always walk through the door and come back and close the door and walk through another door. And it's like the life gives you many doors to practice staying and going, right? That's why they open. They're like, that's.
Thank you. Thank you. Love that so much. Already daydreaming of the clip that is going to become.
Aw,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I have been quoted as saying that in my life, curiosity is an antidote for anxiety and fear
Ooh.
because I can't feel both at the same time. And
Mhm.
just through our conversation today, I realize that Curiosity is also an antidote for me as an antidote for hopelessness
Ooh.
and boredom.
Ooh.
And restlessness, really. All three of those can feel tough for me to sit with in my body, but to be able to engage my curiosity in something that I'm genuinely intrigued by. There's magic in that, right? There's a reason why little ones get very excited when they get a big box
Yeah.
of Lego, right? Like there's a lot to work with there. They're into it. So figure out what it is
Mhm.
that you, and when you don't know, that's a good opportunity to just kind of follow your heart and be like, oh, this sounds interesting. What's that? And like you say, if it's not for you, step back, close the door. That is such a good analogy. So
Mhm.
good. I love
Yeah.
that. And what a beautiful way to practice that sense of self-empowerment.
Mhm. Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
example, practice, go to the library, sign out 5 books that you may or may not even like, and then just practice seeing how much you read before you give yourself permission to not read that book.
Yeah. All of it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's I think for me it's just like dare to bust through your own lens of who you think you are, because that's where I'm kind of exploring. Well, life has told me that's what I'm supposed to be, and who am I actually, right? So it's like here's the ceiling that it was put in front of me, but is that actually true? And how am I constantly limiting myself from exploring the next version of me? And
Or
who do
how
I
am
want to
I
become?
behaving?
Like, yeah, like it's like
Oh,
what version of me wants to, what do I want to step into next?
yeah, yeah. Based on
Yeah.
what you feel from a calling within,
Mhm.
what wants to be expressed, which is very, very different than performing to some role that the
Yeah.
society has tried to
Yeah.
ascribe to you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it also comes down to like really understanding your own value systems. I think everything comes down
Okay,
to like
now
your
we
own
can't,
inner. Yeah,
we're
I
gonna have
know.
to have a
We
whole
won't
other
end. I know we will
conversation
end
because,
here, but
yeah,
values have been coming up for me hugely, and this is where I think integrity comes in. Just because I value something, am I behaving in a way that is expressing this value? And the more I heal, the more I come back to what's true and what matters and everything else, the more I start moving in that direction of alignment. So to wrap, whatever we've been talking about, it's to live in aligned ways, to understand my true driving force, which is value based, and expressing myself in a way that aligns to what matters to me, you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, friend.
Yeah.
I love that you brought it round to that because so much of what we talk about, it's hinged on our values. And I find that values is such a big conversation. It's a whole other area where, what do you mean I get to choose what my values are? I thought you told me.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I had that outburst because my brain was like, okay, then. So we're planning a second soul sister conversation. Maybe we'll get some others to chime in on that. But, there are some really exquisite resources available to even just going to the Googles that can help. I'm still doing that work to get really clear on what it is that
Yeah.
Tina values. This
Yeah.
being, this body, this heart, this
Yeah.
brain, all of it, because for a very long time,
Mm.
I just negatively judged those parts of me that seemed to be in discord with the messaging I was receiving. And
Yeah.
now I'm getting bold and realizing, oh no, wait a minute. I'm just here to provide contrast
Yeah.
to that which is over here, that which
Yeah.
does not feel aligned. But what I am is equally as valid, which is so
Mm.
cool. But
Oh,
it's it's still a practice to get clear on what that is, to embody what that is, to live life in
yeah.
integrity with what that is, and to understand that it could all change tomorrow.
Yep.
So it's like, what are you talking about? I just did all this work to figure it out, and now you tell me change because we change, our circumstances change, and
Yeah.
with every new gust of wind that blows us one way or the other, we come out of that looking at the world with different perspective,
Yeah.
and sometimes that means really huge shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because sometimes I have an idea. I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to learn about wealth, but what I actually wanted to learn was about generosity. because those two are
Oh.
completely different values. Like they may seem same of like, oh, money, but I'm like, I actually wanted to learn the energetics of what yeah, anyway. So to me, this is where I love how you just said like I'm constantly shifting and changing. The Alla of a year ago has a new understanding of what actually truly matters and where I want to put my energy to, because I've been trying to have those conversations with myself, and because I've been trying to align myself with the kind of people that I want to surround myself with, right? So it's like we're constantly evolving, and I think the other piece of advice is like don't get attached to the version of you that you are today.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
know, and that's what you said too as well, because we're here to evolve.
Absolutely.
Nothing's
So much love
permanent.
and gratitude for the
Yeah.
versions of us who are here today. And I'm so excited
Oh
to meet the version of me
my
who
God.
takes me through the world tomorrow. Yeah, it's so true. And being open to embracing that with curiosity and
Yeah.
compassion and so much patience.
Oh my gosh, yes. And gratitude for the past versions of me that didn't know any better. And they all led me to here too, right? So it's almost like what I'm learning is to give compassion and grace to the parts of me that didn't know. And we're operating from a worldview like this until my worldview opened up a little bit more and I could see more and I could make different choices, you know?
And
And so
thanks
it's
to them
like,
for the
yeah,
like the experiences that they created that have shaped you into this woman who can now look back and see
yeah,
all of those dots, right?
yeah,
Like really genuinely. I love that. Celebrating all the versions,
yeah.
even the ones that it's like, oh, sweet one, I wish we could have had a conversation sooner.
Yeah, all of that gets to be there
Yeah.
through acceptance and compassion, self-compassion, right? Like, and for self-forgiveness. That's been, I think, my biggest tool this year is like finding self-forgiveness for the parts of me that were operating from a place that they knew to operate from. And now that I'm here, I can look backwards and I don't need to punish past versions of me for making the choices that they made, because I have more vantage points. So it's almost like that's the continuous work of forgiveness, and that's what the morning pages have been giving me over and over and over again. The love letters that I write to myself and forgiving myself and like being like, I didn't know, and that's okay, and I love you, and thank you. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so, so, so glad that the experience has been really so rewarding for you. And I really do appreciate your consistency in just showing up for yourself,
Mm,
but in for really being vulnerable and sharing about what's been coming up because I really love our little Artist Way community because everyone who's doing the work
yeah,
is experiencing these insights and
yeah,
getting to know themselves in these whole brand new and incredible ways and really accepting that this is a really beautiful, sweet, safe container for me to
hmm,
breathe life into these new ways of being by sharing about them with other people. It's one thing to think and to know them, but to be able to give voice to it, others now know that this part of you exists. And
yeah,
wow, they're here. And thank you so much for being the vessel for all of that to come through because I mean, I know that writing is magical for those who feel a connection to the practice.
yeah.
And yeah, you've spoken so beautifully about your experiences here. I'm very excited because a new book will
Ah,
be starting in January. And so
yes,
when this goes out, we'll be talking more and more about that. But it's gonna be the Artist Way with Sheena is gonna be around for a good long while yet. And I trust that opening the doors a few times a year is going to really support calling in others like us who are starting to go, well,
mm,
something doesn't feel right, but I need something to help me figure out where to
yeah,
go from here. Well, you can just choose to invest in yourself for a little while, and chances are on the other side of it, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what's not working in your life anymore. And,
gosh,
I think a lot of people that scares them. And that may be partly why people
yeah,
have a really challenging time holding that commitment to the
yeah.
12 weeks. But thank you. Thank you for this
Mm.
conversation.
Oh
Thank
my
you
gosh.
for being one of the loves in my life. I am so
Yeah.
grateful for you and absolutely adore you. So, yeah.
Oh my God. I'm just absolutely honored to be your friend and to continue to grow our connection and friendship and to be on your podcast as well. So thank you for trusting me with this conversation and inviting me to come forth and just co-create and see where the conversations go. I can't wait to rewatch this and listen and oh just like I'm just so tickled pink to be here.
I
Thank
love
you,
that.
love.
My pleasure. To all of our listeners and viewers, thanks for
Hmm.
hanging in with us. Alla has been invited to share links for practitioners and spaces that she's excited to share with us. And so I will
Aw.
be sure to include those as well as, of course, all the beautiful places where you can find and follow and connect with Alla. And we will be back for one final episode of the autumn season, which to me feels incredible. Still feeling like a big commitment, and I'm loving the project and loving seeing how it's just growing and evolving and making space for the guests that they're meant to be here. Thank you. It's
Aw.
so cool. Yeah. So
I
best
love that
wishes.
you're trusting the process as well.
Oh yeah, it makes it so much easier to be creative and have fun with it.
Hmm.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you for having me, love. Mwah, mwah, mwah.